pick-me-girl says that she's pregnant and that my husband is the father. So of course I ruined her life. Story time. So me and my husband, who we'll call Steve, have a great marriage. There was only one problem that kept popping up, and that was his best friend, Amy. At the beginning of the relationship, I was like, listen, this isn't okay. Get yourself a male best friend. Not me getting bronzer mixed into my eye cream. But when we first met, Steve told me that Amy had a very serious boyfriend, and that did make me feel a lot better. So after a short while of us dating, he started to bring around Amy to our house more. One day he gets a call from Amy, and I could tell something bad had happened, like just from what he was saying to her. So when he came out of his bedroom, I said to him, like, you know, what's going on? Has something happened? And he told me that Amy's boyfriend had broken up with her, probably because she's in love with Steve, and that he needed to go round as soon as possible. And I was like, well, listen, I was trying to get a good relationship with this girl, so I was like, can I come with you? He said, it's probably best that you don't. And this was so cold. Guys, I waited 4 hours for him to get home from her house. And at this point, I won't lie, I was starting to get really, really annoyed. About 11 at night, I called him and I was like, listen, I'm really tired. I'm going to go to bed. What's the situation? And he replied, hours later, this is going to take a while. What do you mean it's going to take a while? Hasn't she got her own friends? I decided that I was just going to go to sleep. Girlies, you will never guess. You'll never guess. I felt him crawl into bed at about 2:30 in the morning. This man stunk of booze. So over the next few days, Amy keeps calling Steve constantly. And then one night, after expressing how uncomfortable this whole thing was making me, Steve decides to invite Amy round for dinner. Woo! She got to our house. She was like a completely different person. She kept flirting with Steve non-stop, just right in front of me. And she started doing this thing where she would laugh extra hard at his jokes, and she'd be like throwing her hair back. Stop, it's embarrassing. She kept touching his leg, touching his arm. And then when Amy caught on that I was giving Steve looks, she started giving me dirty looks. When she left, I made it very clear that I was mad at them both. He said that he didn't want to reject her advances because he knew that she was going through a tough time and didn't want to make her upset. I'm going to try this foundation. I think it's going to be too light though. The next day I was at work and I get a random text from Amy, and she shows me a picture of a positive pregnancy test. Now, I'm positively sure that's not my Steve. Immediately called Steve because I knew that this girl was batshit crazy and she would do anything to try and break us up at this point. And Steve convinced me, and he was adamant that this baby was not his. He said over and over again that he had never ever done anything with Amy. So he called her and was like, listen babes, what is going on here? Remember the night that he went round and he came back into bed smelling of booze? She tried to tell him that that night he'd got really drunk with her and they had ended up sleeping together. So we started to look into like paternity tests, and we found out that women can do one in the first trimester. And as soon as we told Amy this piece of information, she was like, well, you know, maybe it might be my ex's baby, I'm not too sure. And I'm not gonna lie, after this, we knew for a fact that it wasn't Steve's baby. So at this point I was like, she's trying to ruin my relationship. She's flirting with my husband in front of me. Now she's trying to say that this baby is his. I lost my mind. So I turned up at her work and I confronted this bitch in front of all of her colleagues, and I gave her the reality check that she needed. And I was like, listen babe, just because you're going through a hard time does not mean that this whole world revolves around you. I was like, stop trying to purposely ruin our relationship because you're selfish. My husband doesn't nor ever will want you as his partner. Steve doesn't love you and he never will. I said everyone knows to hold their nose very tightly when they're around you. I would have continued on for a lot longer, but she got up and started crying. And she looked back to see if anyone was running after her, and not a single one of her co-workers ran after her. They didn't give a shit. So what do you think? Am I in the wrong here?
Am I the a-hole for walking out of my STEM family's New Year's party and ignoring them? I, 25 am part of a large STEM family and I feel like I am ruining it. My entire family is Ivy League educated, my parents, 5 siblings, etc. They're all doctors, scientists, and mathematicians. I am the only one who isn't. Growing up I was always the black sheep. School just didn't come easy to me. They even had me tested for learning disabilities at one point. I had nothing, but I just wasn't good at school. I spent my entire childhood crying over math textbooks wondering why I don't get it. Why is it so easy for them and not for me? Art came easy, literature came easy. But to my family that was trash and not worth focusing on. It didn't help that they kept sending me to the same academic schools my siblings went to. Those schools were brutal, the competition there was fierce, and kids were literally snorting Adderall to get through exam week. That environment didn't help. Things didn't improve until I moved out at 18, and got a job at a tattoo parlor. I was able to get an art degree. I started writing, going to therapy, and got a boyfriend. My life just got better because, for the first time, I could just be me. My family couldn't accept this, and contact with them became less and less. Every time I meet them, they never make an effort to talk to me about the things I like, they just talk among themselves about STEM subjects I don't understand. I try to engage with them, but the things they discuss I just don't know. Whenever I ask questions, they get annoyed because now they have to dumb things down for the family idiot. The only time they talk to me is to discuss my failure in life. Mostly I just sit there quietly. That's how my whole life has been with them. Recently I got a publishing deal for my fantasy novel. I was super excited to tell my family at their New Year's party. The first thing they did was ask what kind of novel it was. When I said fantasy, they awkwardly laughed and changed the topic to my cousin's PhD thesis. This was my biggest achievement and they shat on it. I told them they were being rude, and that they treated me like crap my whole life. They snapped back to stop making a scene, that I had been a difficult child and to be understanding. I really lost it then. I screamed that I was never a difficult child, I never drank, sneaked out, stole, did drugs, or got into a fight. I just wasn't into science, which isn't a big deal at all. So what if I wasn't good at school? Any other family would have been glad to have. I left after that. Since then, they've been trying to contact me. To be fair, they do seem very apologetic, but I've been ignoring them. My dad's last text said I'm being childish and I need to talk to them. A part of me feels bad because I ruined New Year's and a lot of my family's colleagues were there too and they witnessed it, which was probably humiliating for them. They work in really prestigious, competitive fields and I humiliated them. Am I the a-hole? Update: am I the a-hole for walking out of my STEM family's New Year's party and ignoring them? I decided to text my dad and ask him if we could meet. To my surprise, he said yes, that we could meet today even. I was more surprised when I showed up to all 6 of my siblings there. I asked them how they all managed to get time off last minute as they all have busy jobs. My sister said not to worry about it. They shuffled some things around. Everybody looked pretty upset. I hate awkward silence, so I started off. I said sorry for exploding during the party. It wasn't the place or the time to air out dirty laundry. I know I embarrassed everyone and ruined New Year's Eve, but I wasn't sorry about the things I said. Just where and when I said them. My brother asked why I exploded like that and how long I felt that way. I told them I had had enough. I started writing my book at 19, and after years of rejection, I got a publisher. Did he have any idea how big a deal that was? Did he think everybody got published? And they just laughed at me and moved on. Like I was an embarrassment. They said sorry and that they didn't mean it. I didn't know what to say, so there was a more awkward silence after that. I just drank my Coke till Dad spoke. He said that he didn't mean to make me feel bad, just that he didn't read fantasy books. I snapped and said, so what? I don't like string theory, but I still ask him about it. I don't like the Eilenberg-Gaia conjecture, but I still listen when he talks about it. I ask questions, and I care. What would it cost him to ask about my novel? I'm so sick and tired of being treated like the village idiot all the time. Mom said they don't treat me like that. I told her they do. They've treated me like the problem child my whole life. She said it wasn't easy raising me. I started yelling at this point. I'm not proud of it. I'm not usually a person who yells, but I just couldn't take it. I asked her what did I do that was so bad. Did I drink? Do drugs? Steal? Cheat? Sneak out? Lie? Fight? Or even fail a test? What did I do that was so bad? Other than being a below-average student? Everyone got quiet after that. I could see my mom knew she was exposed, that there was nothing she could say to defend herself. Then my sister stepped in. She said it wasn't easy with my mental health issues. She's referring to the fact that I self-harmed pretty regularly from 6th grade to 12th. I told her she had the fucking nerve. Remember how I mentioned kids snorting Adderall during exam week? She was one of them. They're the reason I self-harmed because they made me feel like shit just because I wasn't good at math. Either way, I wasn't a problem child because I self-harmed, I was a child who needed help and love. Neither of which they gave me. And if we wanted to talk about problem kids, then we should talk about her drug addiction because I wasn't the kid that had to go to rehab. She started crying and I didn't even care. Dad told me to calm down, but I didn't want to. I told him I was done. From this day onwards they were dead to me and I to them. They said I couldn't do that. That they were family. I said I already had a family, one that loved me for who I am. Dad said that we could try family therapy and that we could work on things. I asked him why? What did I gain from this? He's nothing more than a sperm donor and the reason for my trauma. Even if we go to therapy, it won't make what happened to me go away. I already had a loving and caring family. I didn't need them. Dad started crying at this point. I told them all not to contact me anymore. Not for funerals and not for weddings. My eldest brother asked if I might change my mind one day. I told him probably not. I already have a complete life filled with people who love me. With that, I got up. Dad asked for a hug, so I gave him one. Then everybody else wanted a hug, too, so I did. And I left.